Hello, all you beautiful book babes. Today we will be discussing the dark romance where the darkly Jameson and the sweet and innocent Tatum come together for one explosive night. After the one night, Tatum is hurled into emptiness with no family, no money, and no Jameson. 7 years later, Tatum's life is pretty good till she runs into the one night stand himself. This time she thinks that she can handle Jameson and all his games, but little does she know the dark path that he walks. She is starting to learn where his nickname Satan comes from. Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, all you beautiful book babes. So, today we will be talking about degradation, and I'm sorry if I butcher that. I am awful at my wording when I talk.
Degradation.
I want to say degradation, but it's degradation. Right?
There you go. Yep.
So, my name's Lexi Haynes. I am a published author, and then we have.
I am Nicole Shaw, and I am Lexi's editor for her book.
So today, Nicole will be talking about a book she read. We'll kind of go back and forth or even do some books that we both have read. So we did the first episode. This is going to be our second episode, and we're going to let Nicole lead it off.
All right. So like Lexi said, I'm going to be reviewing Degradation by Stylo Fantome, and I'm probably going to butcher a lot of names in here.
I know I did. When I did the intro, I was like, I don't know how to pronounce this.
Oh yeah, so like one of the characters, his name is like a French name, and like I'm just gonna call him a nickname. It's his nickname in the book, but yeah. So it took me a minute to figure out how I wanted to do this episode because I want you guys as readers to read the books yourselves, but I'm also here to discuss this book. So if you don't like spoilers, I would say read it first. But if you're like me and you can listen to spoilers and still enjoy the book, then that's awesome. I'll do my best to show the relationships and evolution of the characters, but I won't be able to tell you everything and make you feel what the author feels, so it's good for you to read it yourself. And let me start out by saying that I don't consider this a romance.
Really?
Yeah, like it to me, romance is like they have like a good relationship or like they build up to like this bond. Mm-hmm. And this is more like an obsession. It's not, and like or a possession of type thing. And this is also not a standalone, so this is a trilogy. And we're only going to be discussing book 1 out of 3. And if there's more requests for me to do the others, we could always come back to that at a later time.
Yeah.
So the important characters is the main female character, Tatum O'Shea. Also, Tate is her nickname. There's the main male character, Jameson Kane, aka Satan. That's what Tate calls him. There's Tate's sister, Eloise. She goes by Ellie. Tate's best friend / fuck buddy, and this is the name I can't pronounce. It's like Angier. It looks like angrier.
Oh, yeah, I kind of butcher names sometimes when I'm reading if I don't know how to pronounce it, or I'm just like, you know what, this is what I'm calling them.
Yep, so luckily his nickname in the book is actually Ange, so that's easier.
There's a lot of name swapping for genders, I feel like. Not to get into that, but Tatum I always thought was a boy name, and then Ange, you would almost think of a girl.
Yeah, like whenever he first came in, it was Ange, and I was like, wait a second, is this a girl? But yeah, so then lastly, we have Jameson's assistant, Sanders, which also goes by Sandy.
Okay.
So the story starts with a prologue 7 years before the actual story takes place, and in this chapter, we're originally meeting the 18-year-old Tatum, and it opens up with her at her sister's apartment dropping some things off. Tate is in college. She's actually in her first semester of Harvard, and her parents didn't approve of the roommate, so she was forced to move. And you could kind of see what type of parents she's dealing with just from that little bit. Tate's father says jump, and really her only answer is like how high. And like her and Ellie's lives are like planned out for them. So like their career, the person they're going to marry, just everything's planned out.
Okay.
Tate is like a good girl. Like she does all the right things because she's expected to. Her boyfriend is because her parents said so. Her career, she also had sex with her boyfriend because it was expected of her. She's kind of like a people pleaser.
Oh, so we have another people pleaser.
Yeah, she's a people pleaser. And you think growing up in that type of environment, no matter how much you like to break free, it must feel impossible. Like how do you go from like wanting to appease everyone to saying fuck off?
Yeah, it's just like that. Like, how did you come about this?
Exactly. Well, we also in this like prologue, we also get some background between Tate and Ellie's relationship. So Ellie is
Hmm.
4 years older than Tate, and they have never gotten along. Ellie is actually dating Jameson for 2 years now.
Oh, wait. So he's dating the sister, not the main
He's
character.
dating the sister at this part.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't like this
Oh,
already.
exactly, exactly. You know how I feel about cheating. Like I don't care for cheating.
Neither do I. There's certain books that can kind of get away with it. Like there's one I read where they kind of walk the line of cheating.
Like I'm okay with if they cheat on other people with each other, it's kind of okay, but if they cheat on each other with other people, that's where I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But Ellie is also, perfect daughter. She's tall, beautiful, blonde, always done up, and always in the most stylish clothing. Tate is average height, dark, almost black hair, never paid attention to what's stylish or anything. She's the opposite of Ellie.
Okay.
Tate is perfect, but just never perfect enough. Ellie is the actual prodigal daughter. She's the perfect one. And Ellie was never really a sister to Tate. So their relationship was never a good one or close. Like they never got along.
Okay.
So she explains that Ellie and Jameson's relationship also isn't that great. Like they're more like friends who sleep together than actual in a relationship, at least from Tate's perspective. And Tate doesn't even really like her boyfriend, so she really can't judge how their relationship is.
Gotcha.
And imagine how horrible that is. Like your parents force you to date this dude that you care nothing about.
Is it because of like is does it give a reason why she's forced to date him? Like money, status?
And I think that's what it is because that's why Ellie's with Jameson because their family wants that connection with Jameson. So I think that's the reason why her parents set her up with Drew too.
Oh, okay. So they're like money, wealth, status. You date this
Right.
person. Okay.
Yep. So Tate admits she always had found Jameson attractive, but Jameson never paid attention to her. He's barely spoken to her, and she would be surprised if he even knew her name. Like, he's always treated her with indifference.
Oh, damn.
And yeah. So Tate is at this point, she's brainy, she's smart. Like I said, she's in Harvard, and she has no real world experience. So Jameson has always been kind of intimidating to her.
Mm-hmm.
Since like and whenever Ellie's around, no one pays attention to Tate, so she doesn't expect Jameson to ever look her way. So it's just Jameson and Tate at the apartment, and he hadn't been expecting her to show up. She's just there to drop off some things when all of a sudden Jameson starts talking to her, asking her if she needed help, complimenting her, and offers her alcohol. Just finally showing interest in a way he's never done before, asking her questions about her plans. Like, isn't that suspicious? He goes from not
Yeah.
caring
Is
to
this a multiple POV or is it just from his point of view or her point of view?
I meant to say that. So it is multiple point of view and it's also third person too. So like it's not like I am doing this, it's Tate is doing this and I'm not the type that likes third person, but this is actually written really well in third person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not normally one for third person, but if it's done well, it can be very good.
My issue with third person is it's hard for me to connect, but I was able to connect with these characters even though
Because it sounds like she's giving some kind of point of view from the characters in that third person.
she is. We don't get much from Jameson's side, but we do get a good couple chapters in there.
Okay.
So he's finally showing her attention, and honestly, I would want to stay around too. Like, but she gets drunk and not super drunk, but like she's feeling it. And the more they talk, the more Jameson actually starts coming on to her. He even gives her a little nickname, starts calling her baby girl. calling her sexy, and Tate is just confused, like, what the fuck is happening here?
Yeah, that's left field.
Yeah.
Like,
And I
so left
wasn't
field.
exactly, and I wasn't expecting Jameson to be dating Ellie whenever I started this. So like I was like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah.
Well, Tate spills her drink on her clothes, and Jameson offers for her to wear one of her sister's shirts. So she goes to get changed, and they had finished 2 bottles of champagne. So like she's not, like I said, she's not like blacked out drunk, but she's getting there.
Oh, dang, I'm close to that after 1 bottle.
Right? So while she's changing, Jameson walks in, like her shirt's up above her head, and he walks in and he's asking her like if she's drunk. And to me, it felt like he was trying to make sure she was able to consent and make decisions before he really actually came on to her.
Yeah.
So Jameson gives her the chance to walk away, but Tate just can't. He's telling her all the reasons she should leave. He's her sister's boyfriend. She has a boyfriend. Like trying to convince her to walk away, even though he's the adult. Like he's the one that walked in the room with her. He's the one that gave her alcohol. Like why should she be the one to walk away?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. But as you could probably guess from the title, our kink theme in the book is degradation. But he doesn't start off on that right away, though he does tell her, if you don't get the fuck out of here, I'm going to rip your clothes off, bend you over the dresser, and fuck you like you've never been fucked before.
Oh,
And
God.
it's like, oh, yes, go Jameson.
So kind of define, just because in case someone doesn't know, degradation, what exactly is that kink? Almost.
So degradation is like basically calling them names like you're a whore, you're nothing, just kind of like putting them down.
Demeaning almost.
Yeah, demeaning. That's the word.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Just wanted to be sure.
So they're arguing. He's blaming her for being drunk and half naked in his room, even though he's the one that basically put her in that situation.
Yeah.
She's calling him names, and she tells him, you are the one playing games and you lost. Now, this is a big kind of like part is their whole relationship is based off games. So
Okay.
this is kind of where it starts. So this gets him really mad, and he says, I don't lose. So Tate does actually try to walk away, but Jameson isn't having it. He grabs her and just slams his mouth on her and kisses her.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. She knew he was an asshole and this was a game to him, and she knew what she was doing was wrong, but she just didn't care. And I mean, I just can't picture myself in that situation. Like, if my sister was dating this dude, I'd be like kicking the nuts and run. But then at the
Yeah.
same time,
If you're already into him, like, I kind of get both point of views, but I also am like, you know, even if you have a bad relationship, that's still your sister's man. Like, there's a line.
right, but she doesn't know this right now, but she does find out later that Ellie actually knows he sleeps around with other people. So, like, it's not like he's cheating. He goes around and sleeps, and Ellie allows it. Kind of like an open relationship for him.
Yeah, because she's forced to date him, but she's just like, I really don't care. I just have to date you because of my parents, kind of deal.
Yep. Well, she still cares about Jameson, but she allows Jameson to sleep around. But Tate doesn't know this at this point. So like she knows it's wrong, and she doesn't want to. Like she feels like she shouldn't do this, but I mean, she's always cared about him, so she's gonna do it.
Okay.
So the sex is just hot in the scene. He talked dirty. He told her she had to do whatever he said. The way he talked to her during sex was just, in real life, I'd be saying, change your identity and run.
Yeah.
Like, run.
I need to go. This is not my thing.
Yep. But in our books, this is like the perfect guy. Like, Jesus, do it again.
That's why they're fantasy.
Exactly. So he tells her that she will let him do this whenever he wants. He's telling her how wrong she is for fucking her sister's boyfriend, how dirty she is, and it's honestly great. Tate loved it whenever he talked like that.
Okay, so she kind of is into this kink.
Yeah, and this is like her first real experience, because like her stuff with Drew, like whenever she had sex with Drew, it was like in the dark, missionary, boring.
Wow.
So this is like her first real experience with something other than boring sex.
Okay, so it's also that she's not, I feel like she's letting it happen also because she's not aware of what, you know, those other kinks are. So it almost is like, this is new. I want to try this and I want to do it.
Exactly. So when they were talking earlier before this happened, he had said that he wasn't happy and he mentioned leaving Ellie. So while fucking, she had asked if this meant they were together and he straight said, "I don't date sluts, Tatum," and tells her she's just a good fuck and he never said he was dumping her sister. So like in the middle of having sex, if that was told to you, like how could you continue? Like
I'd be like, we can stop right now.
right? Like you just said that you were dumping her. Like I get like you probably don't want to date me, but like what the hell?
Give me something.
So when it was over, I actually almost cried, and I honest to God thought about stopping and not finishing this book because the way he treated her after, I like my degradation or like my kinks and stuff to be during sex, and afterwards the aftercare should start, and there was none of that in this. There was no aftercare. He had no compassion. He actually went cold, and he told her to shut the fuck up and get dressed. So
Damn, yeah, that would be a
yeah.
no for me. I'd probably stop.
Yeah, and I literally like I exit out of the book and I was like, okay, I need to think if I could continue this because he's not going to be the normal aftercare. Like he's a straight up dick. Like this is him.
Yeah.
So obviously she's confused and she's naive. And she's confused like why he could be so cold to her after everything they just did. But also at that moment, the sister returns home. She forgot her keys, so she has to be buzzed in, giving them time to get sorted. And Tate and Jameson start arguing. Tate's threatening to tell Ellie, and he's ruthless and cold, just telling her shut the fuck up, or like you go ahead and tell her it's not going to affect me any, whatever.
Yeah.
So when the sister comes up, she does freak, seeing Tate in one of her shirts, telling her to take it off. She didn't care if she was naked beneath it. Like, how dare Tate wear one of her shirts? But that is kind of the start of the breaking point for Tate. This is the point where she's having had enough. She's tired of being the good girl. She's tired of not being good enough for anyone. She's tired of her family controlling everything. And she just walks away. And when she
Okay.
looks up at her sister's window, she sees Jameson and Ellie
Mm-hmm.
arguing. And she's like, why is Ellie overreacting over a shirt? But she looks closer, and Ellie is holding Tate's panties.
Oh, she saw the panties, but then freaked out about the shirt.
No, no, no. So she was freaking out about the shirt because, like, whenever they ran into each other, they were in the hallway.
Oh,
And she
okay.
saw that, yeah. So whenever she actually went in the apartment, she saw Tate's panties, and now she's freaking out on Jameson. Like, how could you cheat on, like, fuck my sister?
Oh, okay. So she's like, okay, I know you cheat on me, but this is crossing a line.
Yep. So she actually yells out the window that she's going to tell their father everything. And this is where Tate just says, I don't give a shit. She strips off the shirt. And this, like, Ellie is so, like, particular about her clothes. Like, she cares about her clothes a lot, which is why she freaked out about the shirt. And she stomps it into the ground and just walks away. Like,
Good for
Tate,
her.
yeah, Tate was just like, fuck you. So we see Tate how she used to be in this, like the good girl. We get background and learn the family dynamics, the relationship, personalities, whatever. We see how sheltered she was and how controlled Tate and Ellie were. We also see that Ellie feels the shirt is more important than her sister. The Tate we know the rest of the book is absolutely nothing like the Tate we just met, and like she's actually a badass. Tate is a bartender now, 7 years later. She's actually working multiple jobs and she hasn't spoken to her family since that night 7 years prior. Her family disowned her. She's no longer supported by them. She was kicked out of her apartment and her dad dropped her funding for college, so she lost her thing for Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
To her family, she ruined the connection her family could have gained if Ellie had married Jameson. And just imagine being the only one to be blamed for that night. Jameson could do no wrong. It's her fault for everything, even though he kind of instigated it. He gave her the alcohol, he came onto her. So, like, imagine how she felt just being abandoned by her family like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up.
It's really
But
fucked up. It's just like she just
yeah,
lost everything.
exactly. But she moved. She left that city and never looked back. She was free from the expectations and responsibility, and she could do whatever she wanted. She actually became like super sexually active. So like we could really see in that first few chapters, how much her life has changed. She's wild, like I said, really sexually active. She's always down for a good time and comfortable in her skin. She's actually like a man eater now. Like she chews them up and spits them out nowadays.
Oh, she went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah. So she wakes up in bed with some guy and he's asking her what it would take to never leave a guy's bed. And she tells him a little domineering, someone who can handle my crazy, weird, has personality, someone who can make my eyes roll to the back of my head, someone who could talk absolute filth to me but still know where that line is and know when to cross it, someone who would let me be me and be cool with it and let me come and go. And like honestly, right?
Just Jameson.
Yeah, but like, right? I could totally relate to that.
Yeah.
So as a side gig, she does some catering, and Tate accepts a gig later that evening. It's for some firm Craven and Dunn. And Tate is now this smartass, take no shit, does whatever she wants, personality. And while she's at the event, she runs into this guy, like literally crash into each other. And they chat. She finds him attractive, but she's also a smartass. He asked if she had worked for the company, and she was like, "No, I just like to wear aprons and run around kitchens for fun." Fucking love her.
She really went from people pleaser to like fuck everybody.
Exactly. I love it. And it's like, so she had this feeling about this guy, like her body was buzzing from his touch, which never happens. She's never affected by men like this, so she's kind of confused. And in her head, she was like, he looks familiar, but he said his name was Craven, not Kane, which is Jameson's last name, Kane.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't really recognize him, but like she's kind of freaking out in her head because she's like, he looks familiar. And later on in the night, he comes up to her again, and we do confirm that it is Jameson, and they get to talking. And
how does she not know it's him, though? I mean, I know 7 years is a long time, but I would think you would look pretty similar. It's not like you were a kid and then, you got like to 27.
Right, and that's what I was thinking too. Like her, I could expect her to look different. She could have colored her hair, changed her attitude, changed her clothes. But him, the most he could do is like look older.
Yeah.
Like it's not really that big of a change for a guy. So I didn't understand that either. But yeah, she just didn't notice him, and he didn't recognize her. But like same thing, like for him, it was like in the back of his head, like she looks really familiar. She starts calling him once she realizes who it is. She starts calling him Mr. Kane. Like he says something like how different she is now from back then, and how much of an amazing woman she looks like. And she's like, you never really knew me, Mr. Kane. It was one night. You don't know anything.
Dang.
Like she felt the need to beat him. Like she had to one up him.
Good.
Yeah, like she knew that first night with him was a game to him, and that kind of set the precedent for their whole relationship. Like I said earlier, it was like a game.
Mm-hmm.
She never really mattered to him. He didn't matter to her, and she claims that night meant nothing. We actually come to find out that Jameson set the expectations for what Tate looks like whenever she fucks, or like what she looks for whenever she fucks other men. She's always unconsciously like comparing everyone to him, but now that she's with him again, she felt like she could finally get closer and, like I said, beat him. She wanted to one-up him.
Yeah. It's a whole game for both of them at this point, I feel like.
Exactly. They're both trying to play a game. So later on, she's with her best friend, Ange, which is Angier. Like I said, I can't pronounce it. They're out, and I think they're at a club, and Ange is actually in the porno business. At least he's trying to be. He's like a B-rated porno guy. When he and Tate first met about 7 years ago, whenever she first left, he had told her that she had looked hot and asked for her to do a porno. Their friendship is like a big point in the series. Okay. It comes between Jameson and Tate's relationship a couple times.
Like Jameson almost gets jealous of him?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I could see that happening. He gets
jealous. Yeah, because like everything Tate like does, she's like, oh yeah, me and Ange did this or me and Ange did that. But also whenever later on Jameson will ask her like, who's the best fuck you ever had, and she's like, Ange. He's the closest I've ever got to feeling like I felt that night. So like Jameson does not like Ange at all.
Nope.
So, and like I said, Ange was the only one who ever came close to make her feeling like Jameson did. He was just too soft for her to actually stick with him. That's why, like, she didn't really try to keep him. They were just fuck buddies. That's it.
Okay.
And then Ange was telling her, I find it hard to believe you forgot the face of the guy who fucked you retarded, then treated you like shit. And that's where I was like, you're right. Like, there's no way he changed. Like we talked about earlier, there's no way he changed that much.
Yeah, because it's almost like when you experience something like that, it's almost traumatizing. And when you think of trauma, it should almost ingrain that image or that moment in your head because you experience it because it's trauma, so you'll relive that moment.
And it could be the opposite, though. Like, it could be that, like, she remembered the moment, but didn't really remember him. Like, she blocked him out.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's... there's a term for that. I don't remember the psychological term. It's almost like you're so upset about it or so traumatized about it that you forget portions of it.
Yeah, and that's the only thing I could really think of. Like, how else would you not recognize him? Oh, geez. But later that night, she gets a phone call from her temp agency for a job, and she accepts. But the agency even tells her that they requested her specifically, and it was suspicious to me. Like, she didn't even think nothing of it.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, this agency is requesting you specifically. Like, I would be like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So we get Jameson's point of view for the first time here. It goes on to say how he's thought about her over the years, but never enough to find out how she's actually, like, been. He also goes to explain that while he was with Ellie, he hadn't yet had the chance to explore his sexual appetites. And while with Ellie, he did sleep with others. So this is where we find out where he was sleeping around.
But why? How did he not quench his sexual appetite? If he's sleeping with other chicks, he should, like, I don't know. Maybe he should have found something, if that makes sense, to kind of at least curve it, since he wasn't getting it from her sister.
Right, and I think that's why he was doing it. Like, Ellie wasn't really sexually active. If you're sleeping around, you should have been able to experiment. Like, how had you not done that before Tatum?
Yeah, like that's how
yeah,
I see it. It almost sounds like he didn't experiment, and so since he didn't experiment, but he did. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so he tried breaking up with Ellie multiple times, but every time she would scream, cry, beg, and threaten him. And remember, she's the perfect daughter, so it's pretty safe to assume that she didn't want to lose her father's, or like what her father considered to be a great connection to Jameson's family. So I don't think she really cared about him. It's just she was trying to be a perfect daughter. And eventually he just didn't care. He was bored with everything, his life, and he wanted out. And that's whenever Tate had walked into the apartment 7 years prior, and everything happened.
It's almost like he used her as an out.
Kinda, yeah, like, cause then that explains why all of a sudden he was so interested in her, because he was fed up and ready to be done, and was just like, all right, I'm attracted to you. Yeah. Let's fuck. He used her. He goes on to explain that he had a hard-on for Tate for a while, knowing she was a sex bomb waiting to happen, and had multiple fantasies of her. And he reminisces basically about their night together and how she melted for him. How she would do and say anything, or how he could do and say anything to her, and everything he did just made her wetter. But life moved on for him, and now his life was damn near perfect until he ran into Tate. And it was like, he explains it as like his time shifting, and all of a sudden he was back to that night. And we find out that she was actually a pretty significant moment in his life then. And whenever he saw her again, he noticed all her changes, and like she did a complete flip. So he wanted a repeat. Like we said, another game. He wanted her because he wanted to see how she felt now. So back to Tate. She has no idea who hired her. She's just sitting there at the firm waiting for everyone to arrive when Jameson walks in, and she's pissed.
Oh, no.
He told her he wanted to see her again, and she was like, no. So, like, she's mad.
He orchestrated it.
Yeah, he was the one that called and specifically requested her. Yeah. So he's trying to get her in his bed, and she keeps telling him to fuck off, like, without saying fuck off. She's like, no, I want nothing to do with you. And this chapter gets fun. Throughout the meeting, he's calling her, getting her to bring him, like, water, so whenever she gets near him, he could slip his hand up her skirt. And, like, if she walks away before he could touch her, he'll, like, spill the water, so she has to come back and clean it up, having the opportunity to slip his hand and fill her up again in front of everyone.
Oh, there's more
like,
people in the room. It's not just him and her.
Yep, it's a room full of people, and every time she comes near him, he's sticking his hand up her
Damn.
skirt. Yep. So it's another game he's playing, and this time she was determined to win. And when she gets back to her spot at the back of the room, she meets his eye. And while he's watching her, she raises her skirt up slowly and slips off her panties.
Oh,
in a room
how,
full
like,
of people.
did she try to do it secretively at least, or just did not care?
Yep, she was doing it slowly and secretively to make sure no one else turned around, but like she was kind of the only one facing her was Jameson, so like only he saw. And like, could you imagine just sitting there in a room full of people trying to sneakily take off your panties?
That is so funny. I couldn't think.
Oh,
Like,
yes,
was she
I
sitting
love it.
down or standing up?
She's
Okay,
standing up.
maybe, but still, I don't think you could do that really secretively, because like if you're sitting down, you almost have to lift your butt to take your panties off. But if you're standing up, you don't have to move much until it's like on the ground to pick them up.
Exactly. And like she thought she was winning with this. Like she thought she had finally flustered him, but this asshole calls her name and bringing the attention of everyone in the room to her and asking her what's in her hand, because she had her panties, she had took them off at this point, and they were in her hand. She was looking for a place to hide them. And he's like, Miss O'Shea, what's in your hand? And it's like, you asshole. And he's like, bring me what's in your hand, because she tried playing it off like, oh, nothing, is trash. And he's like, bring me what's in your hand. So this bitch, and I love her, she grabs a silver plate, sets the panties down on the plate, walks straight up and says, for you, Mr. Kane, and hands him the panties on a silver plate and fucking walks out.
Yes. She's a queen.
Yes, Tate. Right? I love her. So she leaves, and Jameson just doesn't give up. This dude shows up at her fucking house, and she wants nothing to do with him. Like, leave me alone. But he keeps following her, even goes to her work and sits throughout her shift, and he's trying to get her to go to dinner so they could talk, which she agrees eventually, so he would leave her alone. Like, she went after that night 7 years ago, like, why would she want to see you again? But he doesn't give up. So when they talk the next day, he's asking all about her history, like what she's been doing in the 7 years, and he's like thinking she hadn't been with anyone as good as him. He's like being cocky, and he's wanting to know about the best sex she's ever had. She then explains Ange, her best friend, fuck buddy, and explains how he beat up some dude who disrespected her, and then they fucked, like, basically over that dude in the alley. And that was like her best fuck, and Jameson's like, that was the best fuck you've ever had?
Like, really?
Really? Yeah. So Jameson wants to be fuck buddies with her without the actual buddies, just wants her available to fuck, and he wants to play another game with her. And he admitted to her that to this day, she's still the hottest pussy he's ever had. And like, how do you not get a complex when he says that? Like, sure, you hate this guy, but like, knowing how many people he's probably slept with, and he says that you're the hottest, he could be lying, but also like,
yeah,
that's hot. Like, okay, maybe we could do it again. At this point, I couldn't stand Jameson in this book already. Like, I hated him. By the end, I actually fucking loathed him. Like, this dude just, like I said, it's not a romance. He doesn't really change. Like, in romances, they build that relationship and he gets soft towards the main or the female main character, but that never happens in this, and he's an asshole throughout. Yeah. So she leaves without accepting his offer and ends up calling Ange to discuss it with him. But of course, Jameson isn't about to let her walk out. So she gets another call from the temp agency with a request from Craven and Dunn for another job. She's pissed off, so she turns around and goes back, and she's seeing that he just won't give up. So she agrees, like, we'll fuck, but you have to pay me. Because he wanted her available to him 24/7, and she's like, I work too much. Like, she works so many jobs. He agrees to pay her if she quits her jobs and is available to him at all times. And the only job she doesn't quit is her bar, because she absolutely loves that job. But like, how do you not feel like a whore?
Yeah.
But he agreed to like $4,000 a week, I think it was. So, I mean, she's getting good pay for it.
True.
So he tells her straight up, there will be no dating, no friendship, strictly sex, and she is to be available to him whenever he needs her. So it's a transaction.
But, still. I hate when they treat it like it's a transaction sometimes.
Me too. And it makes sense for his personality, but like, I just, like I said, I really hate how like there's no aftercare with him or anything. Like, he treats her like complete shit, and it's not just during sex. It's all the time.
See, I like in bed, treat like crap. Like most of my degradation books, they treat them like crap during sex, but they at least kind of treat them like a human being. Like sometimes it goes outside the bedroom, but sometimes but there's a line. They know when to stop.
Exactly. And Jameson just doesn't have that line. And that's why I hated him so
Yeah.
much in this book. So this is where we meet Sandy. Sanders is Jameson's assistant, and he plays a huge role in this book. He's not a main character, but he is a very big supporting character. He's basically he becomes Tate's rock. In later books, she refers to Sandy as her soulmate, and like they just have that bond. So Sanders is quiet. He loves Jameson. Jameson had rescued Sandy when Sandy was 13, and Sandy had been with Jameson since. And Jameson considers Sandy like his son. Sandy is now like 20 now, if I'm not mistaken. He doesn't like to be touched. He's smart as shit and can look at things objectively. And he grows really close, with Tatum. And like I said, later on, it's like they're soulmates. Like that's the type of bond they have. I mentioned earlier about Jameson not liking Ange and Tate's relationship. And this is the relationship he's really jealous of. But unlike with Ange, he's happy that Sandy gives Tate what Jameson can't, or like refuses to.
It's almost,
It's
almost like even he doesn't like Ange because he can give him what he can give him, or he can give her what he can give her. But this what's the name? Sandy gives her everything that he can't. So it's almost like there's no reason to be jealous.
Right, like Ange gives her the sex and the relationship, but Sandy just gives her the relationship, like what she needs. So he's not really jealous of Sandy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so she meets up with him, Jameson, later, and the spice in this book is just amazing. So he makes her get under the desk and blow him while he's talking to a client across the desk. So he's in a chair, she's under the desk, and across the desk is a client. Oh my god,
is it at least blocked off? Like they can't see her?
Yep. So this is another game. He told her she has to prove to him that she's actually worth his time. Like, what the fuck? She wasn't the one chasing you.
Yeah, you were chasing her. You can't be demanding if you're the one chasing her.
Exactly. So the rule is she has to make Jameson come before the client leaves their meeting. But Jameson doesn't play fair. He cuts the meeting short, making the client leave right whenever he's about to lose the game.
Oh my god.
Yeah, complete dick. So of course the fun does not end there. He spanks her. Like I said earlier, she started calling him Mr. Kane, and he spanks her for every time she's called him Mr. Kane. I didn't mention this earlier, but ever since they ran into each other, oh no, I did, but like before that, she's always called him Jameson. So now ever since they ran into each other, she calls him Mr. Kane. He hates that. Why do you care, dude? But he told her she needs to call him Jameson, and she just keeps calling him Mr. Kane, so he spanks her for it, and there's more fun time in this chapter. The sex is dirty and fast. He calls her all kinds of names like stupid bitch. Like I said, it's degradation. So there's a lot of it. Throughout Jameson and Tate's relationship, almost all of Tate's stories include Ange, and they're always calling and talking. Lots of sexual things being brought up is about him. And like I said, that's where Jameson starts to get jealous. And for a guy who doesn't give a shit, he's really bothered. Like I said, he doesn't change. So why is he so bothered by him? Like, who cares if she has this guy on the side?
Yeah, especially with the way he treats her. Like, who gives a... Who cares what he thinks, too?
Exactly. So she gets home and she's with Ange, and her and Ange kiss, and it made her feel guilty. She's just with Jameson for the sex, but it never mattered before, so she's kind of confused because she slept with men and then fucked Ange right after, and she's already being affected by Jameson after one night, and she's just really confused. She does end up fucking Ange again too, that like same night, so it's not like she's with Jameson and Jameson only. Ange sees bruises all over Tate's body and freaks. Jameson like really left some marks on her, and by the way, like Ange freaked out. You'd think Jameson beats her. And I kind of felt that way throughout the book. Like, I felt like their relationship was definitely toxic and abusive. And he it's like that throughout the whole thing. So who we see right now with Jameson is who we actually get. And like I said, it's not really, in my opinion, a romance. It's just transactional sex.
So does it almost... Because I'm thinking, like, we're getting close towards the end of this one. So does the first book go into the second book? Okay, so it's broken up.
Once we get to the end, you'll understand. Like, it's cliffhanger on this ending is It's why I loathe him. Like I said, by the end of the book, I absolutely hate this dude, and you'll find out why in a little bit. And what I said, Jameson doesn't change. He doesn't really change, but he does start feeling a type of way towards Tate, and he does say nice things every once in a while, but it's like he admits to himself he feels something other than possession for her, but he won't act on it, and he doesn't ever show it to her. So next time Tate and Jameson are together, he mentions running into an ex while he's out of town, which makes her kind of feel like sick or like some like jealous, and they come to agreement to be able to sleep with other people, but Tate makes it very clear, and this is important for later, she will not allow cheating. She will never sleep with someone who has a girlfriend or who is married.
Yeah.
So they could sleep with other people as long as because she made sure, she's like, you're not married and you're not engaged and you have no girlfriend, and he said, no, I am completely single. So she tells him about sleeping with Ange, and he gets upset, and he's like, I can't sleep with an ex, but she could sleep with Ange. And of course, her and Ange never really dated, so his feelings didn't really make sense, but they came up and like updated their agreement to no repeats. So if you had sex with someone before, you can't do it again. So sleep with other people, but only one night stands.
So you cannot repeat, because it's almost like then you're starting a relationship with them, which almost classifies as cheating.
Exactly. Okay. And when this agreement happened was the second time I almost stopped, because one of my triggers is cheating. I know for all the dark shit I read, that is like a crazy trigger.
It's mine too. I read dark stuff, and that is just a trigger for me. I don't know why.
Exactly. So like them like fucking around on each other with other people was almost like all right, I need to stop here. But I didn't, and I continued, and I'm glad I did. So okay, so though they both agree to sleep around like on each other, and they agree that it's not cheating, it doesn't fit like my romance standard. But like I said, I don't consider this to be a romance, so I was able to move on with it. I love when Jameson tells Tate, I have the strangest feeling about you. I want to take you everywhere and have you by my side, but I also want to hold you down and make you beg and cry. This dude knows how to dirty talk. His dirty talk is great. So we're about 45-50% in the book, and we start to see Sandy and Tate's relationship building. Jameson catches them couponing one day, and he's really surprised because Sandy doesn't like people. He doesn't spend time with people willingly, but as Sandy is, and like I said earlier, Sandy doesn't like to be touched. But as Sandy's leaving the room, Tate has her hand up in the air, and Sandy high-fives her. And Jameson is just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because like he's so surprised by the way Sandy is acting. I love their relationship, and I thought a couple times that this would end up in a throuple situation because of how Sandy and Tate, they had the emotional connection, and Jameson was a sex, but it's purely platonic. So like at this point I was thinking maybe Sandy and her would eventually get together, but they don't. As the story goes on, Tate starts to get more feelings for Jameson, and you could tell he treats her differently, like in little ways. She's not just sex, she's no longer a possession to him, but he's still 100% emotionally unavailable, and he stays that way even later in book 2, which you'll understand why this matters if you get to it. He like doesn't show her the changes in him, so he's still an asshole to her.
Oh damn.
Tate, yeah. So, like, even though internally he's feeling different, he doesn't show it at all. So, Tate and Jameson meet her friends one night, and whenever he meets up with her to go to her friend's house, like, they're arguing. I forgot what the argument was about, but they get into this really big argument. He's treating her like shit, calling her stupid, saying she's a dumb whore, and just putting her down. And, like, this is where the degradation outside of the sex comes, because it starts to feel real outside of it. And to Tate, she starts feeling worthless. So he's making her feel just like worthless, and like everything he's saying is true, and she begins to believe everything he's saying, that she doesn't matter. And that's why I hated him so much, because he took it too far.
He crossed that line that like we all know is there almost when we read these kind of books. It's like there's this fine line, and he went way past it.
Exactly. So when they pull up to her friend's house, she's pissed, but she sees Ange outside, and she thinks she's going to get a little payback. And like the petty bitch she is, she knows Jameson hates Ange, so she runs up to Ange and just makes out with his ass.
I love it.
Yep. So the whole night, Ange is touching Tate, flirting with her, and Jameson is stewing, just pissed off. So Tate ends up going into her friend's room for some medicine, and Jameson corners her. Now, as a side note, I didn't mention this earlier, but it does get pretty significant in the later books. But in the beginning, when they first slept together 7 years ago, Tate was wearing these fake pearls that her then boyfriend got her, and Jameson had told her that they're fake and that she deserved the real thing. So when she goes to her friend's room, the friend has fake pearls, and Tate was kind of like admiring them, which is when Jameson had cornered her and tells her she deserves the real ones yet again. She tells him it's not about knowing her, it's about knowing her worth. Fake is just as good as the real ones if they're given with good intentions and love. Like, let's say Ange gave her the cheapest, ugliest pearls, she would appreciate them more than any set of real pearls her parents could have ever given her. Ange loves Tate, and that's why it matters.
Yeah.
So that pisses Jameson off, and he asks what it would mean if he gave her pearls, and her response is, it depends. How much would it cost? Like, you don't love me, so to be impressed by the pearls you get me, that price tag better be huge. Like, oof. Damn. So he's pissed off about the pearls, and like I said, it makes sense later on, but the pearls become like kind of like a meaning for their relationship. And she's right. It doesn't matter if it's cheap or expensive. What matters is the intention and who gave it to you. And right now, Jameson is showing Tate that she is nothing to him. So if anything, for him, it would mean the same thing. It wouldn't mean the same thing if Ange got her something. So James is upset, and he tries to fuck her at the party. And Jameson is the way Jameson is. He's rough, he's mean, and Ange ends up seeing how Jameson is treating her, and he's pissed. So Ange comes in and starts putting Tate down. Like, how could you let him treat you like this? You're a whore, like, all this. And Jameson, like, shuts it down. And him and Ange kind of get into it. I mean, I get he's concerned, but obviously she enjoyed it. So, like, if you're a true friend, wouldn't you be like, you're okay? You sure this is what you want? Like, why would you be putting her down because this is what she's choosing? So I kind of like start to not like Ange in this part, because he's just being as bad as Jameson, like calling her names and putting her down. So their sex does end up getting more physical later on. She hits him, he hits her. So it's not like lightly rough sex. It's full on fighting.
Wow, I was about to say, I'm surprised Jameson actually let that happen. Her hitting him.
Yep. She straight up like smacks the fuck out of him. Yeah, but she loves being treated badly, especially when she's mad at herself. It's like she feels like she deserves it, and I think that relates back to her family. Like, she feels like she deserves to be treated like shit because of what she did to Ellie, and like, I think she's setting herself up to get hurt or try to make penance for what she's done, and that's why she loves what Jameson does to her, at least in my opinion. So we get Jameson's side again, and we start to see where he's fighting the changing of his feelings. He's always thought of her as a possession, someone he created from that one night together, and he felt he deserved to reap the rewards of who she became because of that. He felt like she belonged to him because he's the one that changed her. It was him that caused the flip. And now, though, he was seeing her as more. He didn't want to get attached to her. So whenever he realized this, he ran across the country. Like, he left her. They were in bed together.
Damn.
And he just left.
Did he say, like, was there, like, did he give some kind of excuse?
No, she was sleeping. So he just left in the middle of the night while she was sleeping.
Damn, what an ass.
So he had to get space away from her. He also admits his jealousy. This is where he actually admits his jealousy to Ange, is while he's away. He doesn't actually show that. He just, well, I guess he does, because he tells her he doesn't want her and Ange sleeping together. And he is like kind of hostile toward Ange. So I guess he does kind of show it. So him and her talk while he's away, and he agrees to throw a party whenever he gets back. He wants to introduce Tate to his colleagues. And Tate has a personality to make everyone love her. And at that party, she basically does that. But Jameson also shows his assholeness too. So he has a partner, which is Dunn. And Dunn is asking about Tate. And Jameson is telling Dunn about their past, and making her out to be a whore, someone he pays for sex. Although their agreement did state he would pay her, he actually hasn't paid her at this point. But he's telling Dunn, like, you can't afford her. Like, making her
like
out to be
a hooker.
A whore. Right. And it's like, what the fuck? So Dunn ends up tracking Tate down later in the evening and ends up, like, offering to pay her what Jameson's paying her. And Tate's, like, real upset because he's like, Jameson wouldn't mind if I took you for a ride, and name her price. And Dunn. Like, what the fuck? Like, Tate's getting pissed. Sandy ends up rescuing her from Dunn and threatens to tell Jameson, causing Dunn to run off. And Sandy starts insinuating to Tate that Jameson actually cares about her, that she shouldn't listen to what Dunn said. But of course, Jameson hasn't shown that to her, so she doesn't believe him. So she's like, no, like, don't say that. Don't lie to me.
Yeah.
Stop.
Like, it's hard to believe that he, like, actually cares for her with the crap that he's pulled.
Exactly. And she doesn't want Sandy to be sitting here telling her that because, like, she feels like with their relationship growing, like, why would you lie to me like that? So I get it. Now, Tate and Jameson's relationship isn't all bad. Honestly, they have great banter and joke around a lot. Her type of jokes are ones that only he gets, and she's, like, the only one to make him laugh. So it's actually good to see that in this. It's not often, but they do have that good banter. Well, Jameson ended up sleeping with other people when he ran away from Tate. So while he was gone, he did sleep with someone else, and we see how Tate likes it in this. So she's like, tell me everything. Like, how did you feel? What did she look like? What did you do? Like, what, like, she wanted every single detail, like, of that.
So she's
sexual
a
encounter. Kind of, yeah, because she was getting off on it.
So she kind of has like, she kind of likes cucking almost, hearing about it. Okay.
Yeah, so, like, she really liked whenever he would go and fuck other people and then come back and tell her all about it. It made their sex explosive. Right. So Jameson kind of gets a little soft on Tate. He's not sweet in the way we are used to seeing, but sweet for Jameson. Tate hates it and tells him so, and honestly, I get it. Because, like, she tells him it hurts more when he's nice, though when he treats her like shit, it doesn't hurt her. It's like she's saying she knows her place, but when he's sweet, it's giving her false hope, and nothing sucks worse than hope. It's
giving
At least
her,
that's what
like,
I get.
It's changing up the dynamic, and so it's like she can almost have a relationship with him, and she's like, no, I don't want to give myself false hope, so don't do that shit.
Exactly, and she tells him, like, don't do that. And so Jameson, like I said, he loves to play games with her, and so far it's been like sexual games, but Jameson here at this point starts to take it up a notch, and he starts playing mental games with her. So he decides to take Tate on a trip, and he surprises her with a secret getaway, blindfolds her, flies her, and she's excited and doesn't know anything about this. Sandy is with them and hasn't said anything to Tate, but we know Jameson is not a nice guy. She doesn't find out until she's already there where they're at. He takes her to her parents' house. She hasn't talked to them in 7 years.
Why did he do that?
They disowned her. Like, how exactly? Like, how fucked up is that? They blamed her for sleeping with Jameson, and yet he's gonna take her there? Oh my god! Like, I was pissed. Like, I was. Oh my god! At this point in this book,
well,
like, you
maybe
could see
he meant it to be a nice gesture. Like I get. So he probably does not know the whole situation, and maybe he was like, oh, well, you know, I didn't, because they set them up with these people of status and money. So maybe he's like, oh, if we say we're together, maybe they can actually have a good relationship. That's the only good thing I could see coming from it. No. But I don't think it was in that light, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I could kind of see that, and I kind of thought that too. I'm like, oh, maybe he's trying to get them to reconcile.
Yeah.
But it just ends up hurting her, honestly. So she's flipped, she's flipped out on him, and her mental state at this point is going down the drain. She asked him how he could do this. You're nothing to me. Like, what the fuck? Or I'm nothing to you, and like, what the fuck does this prove? But his only response is, you are not nothing to me. And that's really all we get from him, is him saying, you are not nothing to me. And it's like, please expand on that. What the hell do you mean? You're intentionally hurting her, is how I felt. So, like,
yeah,
how are you not nothing? So she tells him, you are always telling me I'm nothing, reminding me over and over again how I mean nothing. You're the devil. And it's kind of like she's losing her mind at this point. Like, how could you do this to me? Like, I know I mean nothing to you, but you really hate me that much. It's kind of like her thought process. So at the house currently, it's her sister who is pregnant, the new husband, and the mom. The dad is off but will be in some point later in the weekend, and it's real emotional, and Ellie absolutely hates Tatum still, and seeing her with Jameson just pisses her off more. Even though she's married and pregnant, Ellie admits it should have been Jameson's baby she's carrying, and like, she's super delusional, thinking Jameson was actually about to propose to her, and Tate ruined it all. That Tate took Jameson from Ellie.
You can't blame that shit on her.
Right? Like, why aren't you blaming Jameson? Like,
he was the adult. It was his problem. Like, what the hell?
Yep, he was in the relationship. Like, come on. So Ellie's new husband is a sleazeball. He's staring at Tate's express, even told her that he heard about what happened and how she loves Ellie's sloppy seconds and tries to get with Tate. And when Ellie finds out, she blames Tate. She's like, you stole Jameson, now you're trying to steal my husband too.
Oh my god.
Just this huge thing. And yeah, so Ellie's sitting there tearing Tate down, but Jameson actually does stand up for her. Ellie is telling her that she will never be enough for Jameson, that she's just a whore and not someone he could ever marry. And Jameson tells Ellie that he would never have he would never have enough sex with Tate and wouldn't marry anyone anyway. That Ellie expected more from him for sex, like marriage and kids, and she wasn't worth that price to him. That's why he left. Basically, your sex costs more than what sex with Tate does. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. He's got a little bite to him. Like, he's kind of sticking up for her. He's kind of redeeming
Not
himself
much,
here.
but a little bit.
So we also find out that Ellie's husband beats her. She's pregnant and like he's hitting her. And although Tate hates Ellie, she doesn't stand for it. She sticks up for Ellie and ends up getting hit by the husband. Like the husband actually like punches Tate, and Jameson had ended up like he was walking in and saw it. And
yeah,
Jameson
I was about to
breaks his
say
fucking
he was
jaw.
gonna freak out.
Just straight up, boom. So Tate begs Ellie to leave him, but being the perfect daughter Ellie is, she refuses. And later on, we get the reunion with her father, and honestly, the father is so much worse. Like, he calls her disgraceful after asking her what she's doing with her life. Like, whenever he finds out that she's working at a bar, he's like, you're so disgraceful. And it's like, excuse me? It's been 7 years and you haven't reached out. Like,
why does your opinion matter?
Do you care?
First off.
Exactly. So we're getting to the end of the book here. Like, it's starting that third act shit's about to start happening. Jameson asked Tate, why does she allow him to treat her like he does? And he tells her that he would kill another man for speaking to her the way he speaks to her. She asks him if this was another game, and he tells her no. She's like, well, what are we if we don't have our games? And this kind of explains everything. Like, they were this game, and now we already know her feelings are changing, and she's like evolving into falling in love with him, and now he's saying there is no more games and stuff, but obviously more games are still played. She wanted to leave him broken and wanting more. She wanted to be able to turn him away whenever he wanted her more than anything. Meeting her friends, going to her parents, all that was like mental games they were playing with one another, trying to get the other to react, and it's becoming too much. So Ange and Tate's relationship at this point is strained. He hates Jameson and how he treats Tate. He doesn't understand why he isn't good enough for Tate. They no longer have sex. They don't talk or hang out. So we do get a short chapter from Ange, and Ange ends up betraying Tate in a way that she asked him not to. Yeah, I mean, they still make up, but he does end up betraying her. It's kind of messed up. He's like kind of trying to blame Tate for what he did.
No, that was your doing.
Yeah. So they are hanging out, her and Ange, before he had betrayed her. And they're talking about Tate and Jameson's relationship. Ange convinces her to Google Jameson. And what she finds, she really doesn't like. Like, she sees a lot of pictures of him with the same woman. He's holding hands with her, being a couple. And she starts to get a complex because Jameson doesn't do relationships. And she's starting to feel like Jameson's secret. But what she finds actually breaks her heart, because under the picture of Jameson and this woman is the name Petra and the mention of their status, engaged.
Ooh. Yep.
Remember, she doesn't cheat. Yeah. She finds pictures of them together from his recent trips. Like, he's been going on trips. Like, yesterday he was on a trip and there was a pic of them from yesterday. So like, this isn't old
fresh
stuff.
And it's not just like
stuff.
Tabloid crap. It's like confirmed, it sounds like.
Exactly. So she's experiencing the heartbreak from seeing that, about the lying, him not he's never even told her about Petra. And now like she's seeing all these pictures, and she finally understands that this isn't sex to her anymore. So she's like, I want payback. And she goes out and fucks Nick. He's this amazingly hot first baseman for the Boston Red Sox. Yeah, she goes and gets revenge sex. But it doesn't go as planned. So he asked her about the hookup, and instead of answering him, she asked him about Petra, his fiance. He puts it together and realizes that for Tate, sleeping with Nick was revenge, and he's pissed off about it. Starting a whole new game here. I don't think she or him could ever have won. And like they blow up. They arguing and everything's just real hateful. But it does make room for him to be honest about Petra with her later on. So he does end up telling her about their relationship and like what caused them to break up and that they're actually not together. He does end up seeing her whenever he goes on trips because they're business partners and they're trying to dissolve that. But they do still end up see each other
That's
whenever
still
he
not
goes on
okay.
trips. Right? She should have known.
Yeah, because then she wouldn't have like reason to freak out if she'd known. Like, okay, we used to be engaged, we used to date, but we're not. We're just business partners, so we don't like just not to surprise her.
Exactly. So after that like whenever she left Ange to go have sex with Nick and confront Jameson is when Ange betrays her, because that's where we get his side of the story where he's upset about Tate and Jameson's relationship. So then she loses her shit whenever she finds out what Ange did, and Jameson is like confused why she cares who he slept with because he does end up sleeping with someone. But it led to the conversation where she admitted to Jameson that Ange is mad and used Russ, which is the person he slept with. It's the betrayal he done, and y'all find out about Russ. She is the roommate of Tate, but Ange is mad and used sleeping with Russ as revenge because Tate fell in love with Jameson and not Ange. So this admission straightens Jameson and Tate's relationship. Tate knows not to expect anything else from Jameson, and she's perfectly fine with that. And she tells him this. She's like, if it's just sex, I could live with it. I'm okay with getting just that. But Jameson doesn't. He runs. Like he doesn't like it. So Ellie shows up at Tate's apartment. Surprise! Like her husband beat her again, and this time she actually left. Yay! Yep, and that becomes important later on, which is why I mentioned that. But and then that guy Nick that Tate fucked, they actually become friends. So while Jameson is away, Tate and Nick become friends. They don't fuck again or anything like that, but she does tell him like it could never be more, and Nick is okay with that. And let me mention that while Jameson is away, he doesn't talk to Tate at all. And then randomly, this is where the ending is coming up. Like Sandy shows up and asks her to get back to the house with him, and Jameson isn't back, but Sandy spins some story how they would feel safer with her at the house. So she goes. The next morning, the house was being set up for a party, but Sandy wasn't telling her anything, and Tate could feel that something wasn't right. And finally, she cracked and texted Jameson asking if this was a game, and he replied yes and stopped responding altogether. Now, this ending is fucked up, so let me just prepare you here. There is trigger warnings. I don't want to give it away, but I feel like you should know there is rape.
I can't do that either.
Yeah. So
it's like cheating and rape are the two things I can't.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this one was hard for me to read, but I was glad I did. Like, I was able to move through it. So, when people start arriving for the party, she hears some gossip from these women about Jameson being smart, keeping 2 girls, one on each continent. Come to find out, Jameson ran, but to where Petra was. And he was on the way back with Petra to their home. Sandy said nothing to Tate. The betrayal she felt was just horrible. The emotional turmoil, like, just from this one little bit was making it hard to hear. My heart was, like, pounding at this point. Like, dude, what is he doing?
Yeah.
What's about to happen? So of course she turns to Google, and there is an article: who will Mr. King choose, a sexy American or a Danish beauty? And I'm like, what the fuck is Jameson thinking? What is he playing at? Like, what's going on? Like, why is he all of a sudden trying to hurt her like this? Like, is it because she said she loved him? Like, what's going on? So she finds more pics of Jameson and Petra from him like being gone. They're entering a hotel together, his arms around her waist, shit meant to hurt her. So exactly. So like Jameson and Sandy's relationship, like I said, is father-son, and he's always done anything and everything Jameson had ever asked, including keeping the secret from Tate. And the secret he's keeping, like, it causes like this chain reaction. Like, it's just crazy. So she's asking Sandy, how could you do this? How could you let me walk into this? I thought we were friends, the whole works. And Tate had become kind of like Sandy's home. He loves Tate. They cuddle, they joke, they kiss. kiss, or actually they kissed once. It was his first kiss. And their relationship was kind of everything to Sandy, so he's kind of conflicted by what he had to do, but he still betrayed Tate. So Jameson comes home, and instead of talking to Tate about what his issue is, what caused him to react this badly, he goes off on her, and it's rough. And we don't know, like, while this is going on, why he's doing this, but we find out it's because of her and Nick, the baseball player. Apparently, while he was gone, remember how I said they became friends? Well, there was pictures of them together, and he thought while he was gone, she was fucking Nick. He didn't ask her. He didn't. He just assumed and started this whole thing. So after their fight and her threatening to leave, and which I don't know why she doesn't leave, she stays.
Yeah.
Like, I would have left. Like, it's fucked up. So Tate ends up walking into the kitchen, finding Jameson and Petra looking quite cozy, and she just couldn't take it anymore. She grabs a bottle of alcohol, sneaks into Sandy's room, and steals his Xanax. And while she's in there in Sandy's room, Dunn comes after her. Like, he propositions her, and she turns him down. But Dunn ends up saying some things that Jameson had told him, and the Xanax and alcohol are starting to kick in. So when she says, when he said we could have a good time together, she's like fucked up at this point. She's like, sure, but doesn't care anymore. Like, Jameson said he would never be okay with her sleeping with Dunn, but after what she saw downstairs, she just didn't care. And Dunn actually hits her. He hits her so hard, she ends up flying and breaking a mirror. And she starts second guessing herself, and she tells him stop. Like, they aren't doing anything right now, but she's like, stop. I don't want to do this. I changed my mind. But he doesn't listen. She's mumbling, could barely speak, crying, bleeding, and she doesn't have the strength to stop him. And that's the rape part. Jameson finds them and puts a stop to it, but he doesn't react like you think he would. He could tell she's fucked up. She can't stand, can't talk, and when she does talk, it's not really coming out right, but he starts questioning her, like, did you ask him to have sex with you? And she's like, no. And he was like, she said, he asked me, and he was like, oh, so you said yes? And she was like, yeah, but I didn't want it, like, afterwards. And he says, one moment, and walks away. When he comes back, he hands her a stack of cash. He was like, $4,000 a week for 8 weeks. Here's your money. Get the fuck out. And that's it.
Oh.
So that's the end of Jameson and Tate right now, and we get a little bit more. She leaves, and the situation ends up being the breaking point for Sandy. In book 2, Sandy ends up basically hating Jameson for what he's done, and at the same time, their relationship is repaired pretty quickly because Sandy and Jameson is all Sandy really has besides Tate. So it cuts to Jameson's point of view, and Sandy's begging him to stop her from leaving. She's so fucked up, and Jameson's like, I'm done. But this is where Sandy's like, fuck you, I'm done. He quits, he leaves. He can't believe Jameson would do this to her. Sandy can't stand the sight of Jameson, and like, their relationship was just so close, and I was surprised by how
because it always seemed like he was team Jameson. Now he's like, okay, you've crossed the line.
Exactly. So she's driving, and she calls Ange telling him she can't do it no more, and her mental state was done. Like, she tells him that she needs him. She's not only fucked up, but like I said, her mental state, she's breaking down. The shit that happened with Dunn is fucking with her head. She's just crying, and she crashes the car into an Olympic-sized pool and almost drowns. Like, at this point,
sounds like
I'm
a very
like
emotional book. Like, I'm gonna like most of the scenes, I either want to fight a character or I'm crying for a character.
Yes. So the very last thing is in Ange's point of view. He had found her just in time. She was talking, but her mental state was not good. And after like he gets to her, she goes limp. And to Ange, it looked like she was sleeping, but all of a sudden she starts seizing in his arms. All he could see was the whites of her eyes and liquids pouring out of her mouth. And the last thing we get is him yelling for help. So that's the end of the book. Exactly. So now, if you want to know how like Jameson wakes up and reacts to everything, go to book 2, because like it
gets good finally.
Gets good. Well, he doesn't change. Like I said, he does do stuff, but like his way towards her doesn't change. Like, he wants to be with her, but only as a sexual thing. So it's still kind of like that, but you could start to see where he's internalizing, like, I want to be with her.
Yeah.
But not showing her. Still tight. He's still showing her like, hey, this is just sex, but you're mine.
So
it's crazy. So this is actually my first read by Stylo. Go ahead.
It's like you said in the beginning, it's not a romance. So you're not going to get in your feels that way.
No, not a romance. Exactly. But yeah, so this is my first read by Stylo, and as much as I
It's just
hated
one
it,
of those
I
books
loved
you
it.
get frustrated, but you're like, I need to read more.
Exactly. Like the writing's actually really good, and I felt more of my own emotions than I normally do. Like I normally
Mm-hmm.
flow with the emotions of the character, but I had to disconnect from her because it was just so emotional. Like I was feeling my own shit. And the way Jameson reacted when he caught Tate and Dunn was fucking horrible. Like she was saying no, she was crying, and he pulls him off of her, but yet you could tell that she wasn't into it, and she's fucked up as hell. She's heartbroken. Like it's all from the games he played. He was the catalyst for this downfall. Their darkness in games is what brought them together, and like the way he reacted was just so horrible to me. Like I
Yeah.
absolutely fucking hated him at this point. So let me tell you guys
Yep.
how
Just in
I
case
rate.
you are starting with this episode or any other episodes, we'll kind of bring up how we rate first, just like a small little detail, so that way you guys aren't confused later down the road.
Yep. So spice, everything's 1 through 5. Spice is not just how much spice is in the book, but how detailed it is. 1, fade to black. 5, lots of spice. Humor is really just how funny it is, from smiles to full on laughing. Emotional can be a mix of things, like how mad I get, if it makes me cry, just how I'm affected. World building actually includes a lot. So the world building includes my plot, if there's any plot holes or not, the climax, character development, character chemistry. It's how I'm able to connect to them, and like how the world, like if this fantasy world feels fake or not. And then overall is everything overall. So for spice, I did 4 out of 5. There were some damn good smut scenes, and I loved the degradation in the bedroom. The humor was 1, because their bantering whenever it actually did happen was actually kind of
Okay.
cute and funny. So emotional, 5 out of 5. I mean, it
Oh
really
yeah,
couldn't be anything else.
emotional. It felt like it was
World
emotional. You were
building was
like
5
ready
out
to
of
fight somebody.
yeah, and then you're crying, and it's like, oh god, yeah. So emotional was like 5 out of 5 for sure. The world building was 5 out of 5. Even though it was third person, I was like sucked in. As many times as I thought like I couldn't finish this book, I just couldn't stop. And then overall, though, was like 4 out of 5, because I hated Jameson way too much. Like I went
Yeah.
into reading this without really knowing what it was about. It was on a list, and my husband was like, read that, and I didn't know anything about it. I just read it, and I absolutely hated Jameson. So that's why I overall got 4 out of 5.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But that's it. And yeah, if you guys want us to go into more of
Oh,
books 2 and 3,
absolutely.
we
The
can.
second book sounds more interesting.
Lexi?
I'm not gonna lie, since you gave like a little tidbit.
Yeah, we definitely see a change. Exactly. And we do see a little bit of change, but it's not really much.
All right. Oh yeah.
You
Sorry.
you gonna do the ending?
But yeah, so
You're good.
thank you, all you beautiful book babes. And please remember that please leave comments of books you may want or anything we should take out, add to the episode. Like I said, this is our first podcast, and we are growing together. And also, I now updated our social media. I have to pull it up to remember the social thing, God, what is it called? The social tag. I'm not a technology person. Oh my god. I'm like, no, I'm not a technology person. So on TikTok and Instagram, it's Basic Book Babes Podcast, and there is a dot in between. So basic.book.babes.podcast. It's a little lengthy, but I wanted to keep it kind of very similar to our title. And I will be posting little tidbits of future shows or anything like that. So please make sure you follow and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.